I think we're going to get started. I know that there's a lot of name tags over there, so we'll just let them come in, and we'll all silently judge them. Welcome to the BILAT workshop. Basically, we're here to talk to you about the European Union and doing proposals and submissions and then other fun things with the European Union. I'm Jennifer Ponting from Harvard University, and I'm joined by my two colleagues from Europe, Annika Bonner from ETH Zurich and Niklas Schultes from Photonic Sciences, which I have yet to learn how to say, even though this is my third time giving this workshop. They are going to talk to you really in great detail about Horizon 2020, which is the main source of funding. We're going to talk first about the EU funding landscape, a little bit history of how we got here. We really understand how Europe funds research, the way they do things, right? If you understand how we fund research in the US, it makes it much easier to figure out why we have to jump through all those hoops. So the same thing happens in Europe. Then we'll talk about the work program, the remaining 2.5 years of Horizon 2020. We'll talk about the Marie Skłodowska-Curie fellowships, which is kind of a really great way to start working with European Union money. And then we will go into Horizon 2020 in great detail, including managing grants and awards. We're going to do some interactive login to the portal, so you'll actually be able to kind of get a feel for what this looks like for a little while. And then we'll end in sort of a summary about what comes next and also how Harvard has kind of entered into Horizon 2020 and other collaborative projects. Again, this is Harvard. We have a lot of, I'll say a lot, we have quite a few Horizon grants, and we also are involved in Horizon 2020 through a lot of different actions. And so at the end of the day today, I will kind of explain exactly what that really looks like. If you haven't heard of Harvard, we are the oldest institution of higher education. We have about 2,400 faculty and about 10,000 plus or minus academic appointments, which includes all of our affiliated hospitals. So the one significant difference with us is that we don't actually own a hospital. We only have affiliated hospitals, of which there are 14. Combining that with our decentralized structure of 10 faculties, including the Radcliffe Institute, Women's College, we are a pretty slow-moving, decentralized machine. So I'm sure a large state institution knows nothing about that. But also, here's a few numbers to kind of give you where we're coming from and why we might be interested in doing more Horizon 2020 work. And that's about it. So I'm going to apologize in advance. We've been on this tour for a week, and I have come down with a cold. So if I'm not being loud enough, please just wave your hands and say, speak up. No, not yet. I'll wait until midway through. Okay, so now we're going to do the rest of the introductions. Then we're going to learn hopefully a little bit about, we should do, sorry, one of those days. We'd love to know who's in the room. So there's a lot of you today. So I think we'll just do a show of hands. Who is a faculty or researcher? Great. Who is in research administration? Okay. And of the research administration, are you at a department level? Department. Or is it everyone then central level? Pretty much. Okay. And then has anyone had experience with either Horizon 2020 research funding in the past? Few nods. And were those collaborative projects or were those fellowships? Collaborative projects? Fellows. Okay. Great. Awesome. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues. A little bit of housekeeping. Interrupt. Like, do not sit there and be very confused by what we were saying. Raise your hand.
So my name is Annika Dana. I'm and that's also why we have an office, a mutual office, covering both faculty. The old university was founded in 1833 and Federal Institute of Technology in 1855. Generally, small country. It has about 9 million inhabitants and 12 higher education institutions, universities, and 2 federal institutes of technology. So it's rather just some figures. We have about 25,000 students at the university and about 19,000 now at ATH Zurich, while there's more staff at ATH. It's 8,143,000 at. And but this is one of the typical slides you always show where the rankings are and how many Nobel Prizes you have. But this is always competitive. Just claim Albert Einstein. So you see that much about ranking. Our office is we are dealing only with international research programs as of postdoc grants, except Marie Curie is the only grant scheme where we actually also dealing with PhD students. We have been a joint office for both institutions in 1997. Originally, there were actually 2 offices. They merged. We are nearly 20 people working there, 50 full-time employees, and we are members of several networks. What it really is, but our main focus is at the moment Horizon 2020, or generally are the European research programs. But of course, we are also responsible for the US grants. So as much as you know about EU grants, we kind of started learning. We are active in several networks. NCURA, you're familiar with, and equivalent to that Java, and wanted to as well. So it's also a network. No. No. It is Switzerland. Yes. Yes. Which Switzerland is not, but both Norway and Switzerland, we come later to that, are associated to Horizon 2020. So there is a contract between those countries, between Norway and the European Union, and between Switzerland and the European Union, where we are explicitly treated like a member state, same rights and same obligations as member states, except we're called member states, but associated. But we go more into detail about that. Okay, so I hand.
I'm from Barcelona, and I do not speak with a Spanish accent because I'm not Spanish. And I moved there a year ago, and before I worked with Annika same team in Zurich actually. Now, the Institute of Photonic Sciences compared to Harvard and very tiny institution, but it's also very new. So it was founded in 2002. It was founded with a clear mission to become world leading in photonic science. And for a European institution, we are pretty heavily funded through competitive money, actually. And so meanwhile, we have grown a little bit. We are more than 400 researchers. We are 500 staff in total. And now it has come the time with 26 research groups to consolidate after a phase of growing. So that's actually what so my task there is actually kind of advise group leaders on regulation, policy, procedures, and also like on an institutional level. That's what I'm. So today's goal. What are we gonna do? We hope that you will understand the EU funding landscape a little bit and be able to apply regulations and rules of Horizon 2020. We will also have a look at the participant and do some hands-on exercises so you can play around in there. And we will talk about Mercury students and fellows, how to host them, and what your task, what you should do hosting Mercury. Now, before we dive into that, I would like to give you some definitions that might be different new words that we are going to use during the day, and I think it would be good to quickly explain this. So I go through them. A coordinator does it. Yeah. So we have some people already a little bit with experience in Horizon 2020. So there are basically two kinds of projects: individual research grants and collaborative projects. Collaborative projects are always built up in consortiums, so it's different institutions working together. And these consortiums have a coordinator, and the coordinator is actually the one who does communicate with the European Union, and it's the pass-through entity. On the other hand, we have beneficiaries. These are project partners who receive money from the European Union for the project they are working on. And we have other project partners of different kinds. We will talk about it. Then we will talk about, or not specifically talk about, but you will hear a lot in terms of member states and associated countries. So when we talk about member states of the European Union, these are states part of the European Union, compared to associated countries who are only part of Horizon 2020. So that's actually your question from before. Because Horizon 2020 is like the member states of the European Union do pay kind of a membership fee to participate in the program, and associated countries are outside the European Union, but they can access the program. I think Annika will explain that a little bit more in detail. And then we have third countries, and third countries are, they are like the United States of America, member state, nor an associated country to age 20. We will have a look into the participant portal. The participant portal is actually a grant management awarding system from the European Union. We will talk a lot about work programs. Work programs are the publications of the different funding announcements. We will talk about calls. A call is comparable with maybe a program announcement in of NIH, and the topping would be a specific funding opportunity. The collaborative project I already explained a little bit, and then like apart from that, there are also individual research grants who are like for one single. So with that, I hand over to Claire, who will talk shortly about the BILAT 4.0.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone being here. And thank you for Faye and LJ organizing this wonderful thing for us to faculty researchers and research managers. So why are we here and what's BILAT? Is funded by part of and as policy process talk about how we I have I wanted to point out that within on it, also on our planet action by webinars so for this and we by other posts as federal plan that online
And as I was just pointing out, so first take notes, but you will receive all the slides after. So the EU funding landscape. Well, we are talking a lot today about Horizon 2020, and Horizon 2020 is the 8th European framework. Now, what is the framework program? Here's what Wikipedia says as a definition for the EU framework program. But generally, the European research funding evolved from a handful of separate programs and became, in the end, what is now a research and an innovation program. Yes, please. Mm-hmm. Okay, so BILAT USA 4.0 is a European funded project. So on that, first of all, you as ASU, if you would like to apply for funding, you would not go via BILAT, because BILAT in itself is a self-contained system. What Claire and I was just pointing out that NCURA is national have questions or need more detailed but also agency within the European Union, what the European Commission might have for background, like to know more on and also that is most important. Then via but the pilot itself, just project and here. And the idea behind that was really to facilitate and make it easier for European and American institutions to collaborate. So offering both sides of the Atlantic, so to speak, more detailed insight into what opportunities there are on the other side of the ocean, and helping helping U.S. researchers or U.S. research administrators to access this information. That is also why we are currently here, because it's always easier to ask the question to a person you've actually seen and not reading the question patiently, and there's so much room for interpretation. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you. So since 1984, as you also see here on the slide, the framework programs have been the funding programs drafted and implemented by the European Commission to support and foster something which they call the European Research Era. And the European Research Era is a research landscape that mainly the member states share beyond their national borders, in order to also coordinate national activities and set up a larger market for research. So the first framework program, as I said, started in 1984, but it's nothing new, the concept of research collaboration in Europe. So, but it was not always as coordinated as it is framework. So originally, when the European Union, under a different name, was formed in the early 1950s, there was a concern and also collaboration activities for separate in separate different areas. It started with industrial sectors, with coal, with steel, and atomic energy, and then later on other research programs were added in the area of environment and molecular biology. But then it was one commissioner who wanted to kind of rationalize the different initiatives in one single coherent framework, and that was the framework program did start. And ever since 1984, they have actually been expanded in scope and scale, and matching also the evolution of the European Union itself. And as the European also enlarged, candidate countries, so countries who are applying for member of the European Union, have been invited to also participate as partners in programs, and also now with Horizon 2020, completely open to the entire world. So every institution around the world is invited to participate in the program. This is just another way of showing how it evolved from the this is already the indication for the upcoming framework program, Horizon Europe, will start once Horizon 2020 ends with of 20, and on 1st of January. No. Exactly. So, and also that you will see that in more detail when we are talking about the work programs, because towards the end of each framework program, the last 2-3 years, it is already the stepping stone, so to speak, to the upcoming. I think what the Commission has been doing now is also trying to make it easier for third countries, as I was saying earlier, for countries from outside the European Union to actually access and better understand and simplify the methodology to participate in the program. But also, something happened which was called Brexit, which keeps Europe rather busy at the moment. Actually, a full member state of Europe would like to leave the European Union, and that is, of course, like with every divorce, it's bloody. And they are fighting quite a lot. It's not only about the money, but of course the money is something which plays a very big role. The relation, it also means a lot, has an effect on the relationship a country has with the European Union, because the European Union understands itself as one single market, and trying to get out of it, one single market, establish new rules and regulations, access to the market on all levels, not just in the area of research. I think this is the easiest part. But other, and we also indicate there have been something established between the EU and the US, which was called the implementing arrangement. We'll talk about that also later. And here, just for you to better understand, so Horizon 2020 is an 8 billion euro package for 7 years. And what we try to do here is break up from the first framework program to Horizon 2020 the average annual budget in euros. And it sounds like very much. 1 billion was spent in 1984. And you must also not forget that in general, the framework program as it stands right now, Horizon 2020, is about 5% of the overall budget spent in Europe for research. So it's actually it's not very much. At the same time, what by implementing framework programs is really to establish trust amongst institutions and to work collaboratively internationally and beyond borders. And I think this is the main achievement also of the framework programs, that the trust from what institutions to collaborate internationally, but also on a political level amongst each other, the policies able to be streamlined. That is basically the main achievement also of such. And as you can see, it has kind of risen to 10 billion now on an annual basis. But of course, you must not forget that, of course, Europe itself has been growing since 1984 until today. And as I said earlier, also said, candidate countries who are interested in entering are eligible for being funded. That, of course, also adds to the amount. So here, that feeds back to what you, sir, were asking earlier about associate countries and member countries. Here you have a picture of the European Union. All the colored countries are the member states of the European Union, and all countries are candidate countries, so countries who like to enter or are in negotiation with the European Union. And then there are a lot of others. Some of them, though, are associated countries, countries which have a bilateral agreement with the European Commission, but only for Horizon Europe, for Horizon 2020. And that is Norway, Iceland, and Switzerland is also a part of that. And also the associated country status can change. So this is a negotiation going on between the European Union or between the European Commission and the potential country. Israel is, for example, also an associated country. And once the framework program is agreed amongst the member states, then the Commission actually starts negotiating terms and conditions for being associated. Associated to it means earlier that you have exactly the same rights as member states for the duration of the program, and you pay a specific amount, a negotiated amount of money, and then you get all funded out of the European. You don't fund your own research section, but you actually pay money into the entire pot, and as such, you are then dealt as an associated country. So why on earth should one participate in Horizon 2020? Well, we have included some of the triggers. It is, of course, access. It allows researchers access to markets. It is to access knowledge. It's attracting talent and investment for your institution. And it also allows for more visibility and global or international, or more global or international profile. And basically better research and exploitation. Here we wanted to show you, and you will receive, when you receive these slides, you will receive also slides where also level mind. What we try to do here is to show you that the Horizon Europe is only one program amongst a lot of programs, and these are here you see the main groups of instruments reflecting the funding logic of the European Union. So there is among the structural funds and the cohesion funds of one level, and also there the territorial cooperations are subsidized. Then there are the community action programs, which are operated by the European Commission, and there also programs like COST, you might have heard of, under, as well as the ERA-NETs and Horizon 2020 or Erasmus. I'm sure you might have students the Erasmus program. And then there are on a third level also the external cooperation program. Any questions? Okay, let's dig into Horizon.
Let's have a closer. When we talk about the numbers, I mean, 80 billion, it's a 7-year program, broken down to 1 year, as Annika. Programs also, and Horizon 2020 trying to unify and unify everything. So Horizon 2020 it would be as department in the US. So besides that, the single member states and countries, they still have their research and do finance. So behind Horizon, there is a political. The program has 3 focus areas. One is excellence. So it is only about science. Bottom up, the researcher has an idea, submits the project, and is evaluated on does try to enhance innovation, to create jobs. It's to strengthen the European economy. That's kind of the back plan of the pillar. Then we have the societal challenges, which tries to tackle challenges of European society. Health and this is a graphic illustration. We have other programs that come in. Annika said it before that the European Union, when it started in the 50s, it was like of So this is actually a little bit more in detail what it is about. We have here the Marie Sklodowska-Curie action, which we will talk about, is under the excellent science pillar, so it's about the excellent science. And the European Research Council, also the European research area, this creation of collaboration, it's also reflected in the infrastructure projects that like the European tries to build infrastructure together. So another picture how Horizon can access from the United States. Project. Which project? Okay. Yes. Exactly. So it's in red. That's why, because it's the institution that's doing it, as you say. But the researcher itself is eligible for the program. But it has a hook, as you say. They have to spend at least 50% of their working time. So this is an administrative challenge, I would say. But it is like over the whole project time. So you can go 1 year to Europe, come back for a year, go 1 year back to Europe, come back and go. You have also to spend at least, depending on the scheme, we have to a certain amount of your working time on the project. So let's have a closer look at it. Yes. Yes. Any more questions? Okay. So, yes. Yes. We will have however, you have to collaborate. And there are some specific rules, and you need to set up one of these. Is an associated country. That counts towards the minimum institution you need. Others, towards this eligibility in institutions. These are things like education. Within Europe, we want to have one united European research area. And it's funded. Yeah. So it really works. So let's talk quickly about the ERC, the European Research Council. It's Europe. It's a very prestigious grant. It's an individual grant. So the grant is given to a researcher to take it with him or her. So, kind of institute. However, you need an institution within Europe that hosts you as a researcher and the project. Now there are basically three, how to say, or age levels of or something. Starting grant is considered for young researchers who obtain their PhD between 2 and 7 to start their own research group. Funding to 1.5 million for a 5-year project. So it's relatively good money they try to give you to work independently, independent from the institution, independent from anything might disturb you developing a career. So it's meant to fund the whole 5 years project. Consolidator grant is up to 2 million for 5 years, and the advanced grant is up to 2.5 million. So for the starting grant, you need to commit 50% of your working time to the project. That's lower with your age, basically. In addition, what they do, so if you from the US apply for a university grant and you move over to Europe, they would also, you would be eligible for some startup funds. With the starting grant, that's up to €500,000 to move over to build up your lab, buy some equipment so that you can start work when you're there. And that grows, like with the advanced grant, that's up to 1 million they would give you to do that, consolidate. So these are individual projects. Now, a rather new scheme is the synergy grant, but that's meant for collaboration between candidates. So they were really good researchers to collaborate there and work interdisciplinary. So there you can apply for a budget of up to 10 million with 4 partners and with 3 partners totally. What else? Yes. Criteria. You just have to be an excellent researcher. it's always the first January of the year that counts. That gives the deadline. But what happens? So as you are I mean, very different. So you would probably have better chances than the years guys who last section talents. So you cannot compare um um talents, not compare. So they always put you on the level of you. Does that answer your question? There is always no. Yeah. So the starting line once goes up and the consolidation. So that's time. But the work program is published. So November. Short now. Evaluation comes later, I think. So the projects are supposed to be really like handling something. And then from your by the proposal and first this is actually quite fair for the amount of money and the very basic really. Um, you submitted first January by 10 panels by but and second 15 sorry. Approved by the third way. Take a long navigating what we Up you can be less. You can be a few, but the maximum is 4. It can be within an institute. As far as I know, yes. But you need a European. Yeah. That yes. Switzerland counts. So Switzerland counts, Israel counts, Norway counts, Tunisia counts, and Georgia. Sorry? Yes. So these are That's a smart suggestion. So, any more questions on that? Yes. So the point is that they're really nothing more. We will have a look at that later. Any more questions? Hello. We talked about this. These slides are actually just some links for you to stay up to date on what's happening. Then I
Individual grants, because I'm going to talk about collaborative projects now. Okay, wrong side. So first of all, how to collaborate in a collaborative, how to participate in a collaborative project. So as a USA, as an entity from the USA, you can enter any collaborative project. And you can also receive funding. Now, by default, I would say not receive funding, but there are some rules and regulations, some rules where you actually can do. As a US institution in a collaborative Horizon 2020 project, you can actually also coordinate projects. You can be the in between person or the institution that actually runs the collaborative project and facilitates the dialogue with the European Commission. Okay. Yes. Okay, I'm just saying it is possible. But and also we will hear that again and again and again. But these are the conditions you have to. There needs to be at least three for any collaborative project, Horizon 2020 project. There needs to be 3 participants from different EU states or associated countries. But that doesn't mean that it cannot be 2 or 3 institutions from the same country. But it needs to be at least 3 institutions from 3 different countries. So the US institution is the minimum, that it's the 4th institution to enter this collaborative project, or it can be the 24th. Because collaborative projects can be anything from 3 up to, depending on the size of the project you are proposing. So as it says, as an international partner, you come on top of that minimum. In respect to the funding rules, the general rule is that automatically funded are institutions from member states, institutions from associated countries, and countries listed in the Annex A of the work. The work program will come into detail there, and I will show you exactly where you find it. But there are, depending on announcement for here, it can vary. That specific countries or specific from countries, institutions from the countries can be funded. And so you have to check there in the NSA of the work program where you are interested in applying for new funding or applying for participating, whether the USA is listed actually. And institutions from partner countries are funded when there is an agreement existing between the two funding bodies, and this is actually the case for the Horizon 2020 in the area of health under Societal Challenge number 1. So there is an agreement between the European Commission and the NIH. That is why US institutions are automatically funded for these kind of calls. Now it sounds like help, but are some very important that identify and that is also other, so that might also fund it even are not. Yeah, add more information to really confusing things already, but you will understand hopefully later better. And also, you also will get funded if you are as partner. And our project partner because of the world. And if oh, convincingly enough, this part is actually and success of the project, and this is a successful project if it's getting done. So if the Commission decides that, then the US partner would. It could also happen that the Commission says we do fund the European side of the project, but we don't consider the partner as essential. That does not necessarily mean, so if you're participating in something like that and in a proposal and European partners are burdened by essential, that it might not be funded, not decides whether you're essential or not, and it's not kind of out because you think you can't do it. Okay, so the work programs, if any questions? Yeah. No, the analytics, so they actually is it best under number 1. There are because European are in do not get funded via commission. So you don't need to know about this. Just are eligible by default. Not yet. No. We will later on kind of show you what other possibilities and negotiations, discussions they are going on between the funding bodies, but there is a clear arrangement, and that has been already existed already in the previous framework program. So this has proven as. So the work programs itself, they all funding opportunities of Horizon 2020 are set out in multi-annual work programs. And normally the work programs are published every second year. This is a 7-year project program possible. So the last work program is actually a 3-year work program. And it covers also all the calls which will be published between 2018 and 2020. So you already find indications what kind of calls will be published in 2019 and 2020, because all the topics which will be coming up at time. And they cover the majority of the support that is available. Now, why I say the majority is that all over of money and for ad hoc problems that might come up, like if all of action or immediately support needed to be made. Well, research could wait for another. Well, that's what framework program is coming up. That actually. That is always where they keep back some of the money. And the work programs themselves, they are prepared by the European Commission through something which is called a strategic programming process, integrating also the EU policy objectives and the priorities. And this is something which also Nicola told you about when Horizon 2020 was conceived, and we are now working on Horizon. You can imagine how far that goes back. The economical situation around the world, also there in Europe, was not that good, that the focus really was on creating jobs and opportunities in Europe. So the individual work programs themselves are the detailed implementation plans for the specific programs, which saw earlier under the 3 pillars. And they specify each of the programs specify the concrete scientific, technical, economic, and societal objectives. And you also find there the background of the thematic areas. So this is something which we also find all the okay, and now, oops, going too fast. Here on this slide, earlier, if you look on the funding, why is are not might be for very fine conditions. So the work program 20. We will go into more detail with the portal later. But so far clear? Yeah. Yes. Only. Yes. That is really the minimum condition. Always, always, always. 3 different institutions out of 3 different countries. Because the background there really for the European Union is mobility and is international collaboration. And that is why there's this. The only sign a contract with an institution, so it's never an institutional signature. But you, as a researcher, would not receive the contract, but the institution receives the contract. And so it's also the institution that decides to another university whether he can actually take that collaborative project with him or not with her. But normally he can. Here's from one institute to another institute, he can take the grant with him as long as he stays in Europe. Or you have an example. Oh, stop. So I take only this slide and then we make a break. No, institution can be anything. So an institution can be a business, an SME, an industrial sector, it can be a public institution, it can be a private institution, it can be an institute of higher education, it can be a foundation, it can also be, they call it organization, and any they call it non-profit organization. So that is actually a very wide. So, and because you were saying, are we still talking about the collaborative? Yes, because the work programs, for example, for 18 and 20, they are translated into 5 different strategic directions. Now, for the individual grants, they are entirely bottom up. So they don't need strategic direction. But for all the collaborative projects, they are top down. The calls are actually very clearly, but there are definitions, and there are in specific areas, and they are described in the text. And also for these years, the last 3 years of the program, so 18 to 20, the strategic directions and focus areas are the ones indicated down here. So it's increased investment in sustainable development and climate-related research and innovation. It is integrating digitization and all enabling technologies and societal challenges. Strengthening the international research and innovation corporations, societal resilience, and the last one is the market creation innovation. Market creation innovation. And now, before we kind of go into this, I think we should take a 15-minute break. Do you agree on that? And we are here, so if you have questions which you didn't dare to ask before, ask us now. We're slightly behind in time, actually a lot behind in time. So that's why we kind of ask you to kind of trade. We have, before lunch, we cover something. I just wanted to also point out at this stage the international cooperation flagships, which are announced in the work packages 2018 to 2020. And this is something which the current Commissioner Moedas came up with his mantra in 2014, his 3 O's, and one of them was open to the world and really focusing on international collaborations. And that is why the strategic committees have identified areas in which the European Union is interested in collaborating with the countries around the world. This is what they set out for the entire world. And you can read anything on the previous slide. This is where the focus areas or the examples for inviting also US cooperation or the US flagship initiatives are located. So it's in the area of Marine Arctic, and there will be calls on All Atlantic Ocean Alliance, on cryptosphere and risk, health sector. We covered that earlier with the reciprocity between the NIH and the European Commission. In the transport area, it's on road automation and aviation green, and on aviation. In the energy sector, it's on renewable fuels and nano and safety. In that area, it will be calls on regulations and also on safe design. And just as one example, there is a call was open in this year, or it's closed, or it's still open, on nano safety, where there is from the European side 28 million of funding, and there will be, as you can down here, has encouraged. EU-US collaboration is encouraged, and there are projects. US participation will be funded or can be funded under the US National Nanotechnology Initiative, meaning that the US National Nanotechnology initiative will actually have an open call in the same area with similar deadlines. Now, there is no dependence between the European Commission and the US National Nanotechnology Initiative. That also means that if the EU part is funded, that doesn't mean that the National Nanotechnology Initiative will also fund the US section of that project. But it is at least a try to kind of balance the investment in these research areas. And there will, there'll be a call next year for on automated vehicles. From the European side, they will have a 30 million euro funding, and there also it mentions twinning with US entities, and there the US participation would be funded if successful, also if the US partner actually applies under the open call by the Department of Transport. And I just wanted to flag out, you were earlier mentioning a collaborative project with here at ASU. And I also wanted to flag out two projects, one in the health area where the US has been participating in successful projects which have been running from 2014 to 2017 with a total of 25 billion euros, where the EU contribution was the biggest share, 20 million, and similar Atlantic collaboration in the Arctic Ocean with a lot of more countries. It's a project which is still running until 2019, but you see there are successful cases of collaboration between the EU and the US. Something which Claire mentioned earlier already, terminology guide, which is part of the BILAT program. This is something which we realized when dealing with Horizon 2020. If we speak about a PI or a contract about a partner, it does not necessarily mean the same things as what you understand under these terms. And also a grant agreement is something completely different, or a contract. When we speak about a contract, you understand something under the term contract, something different than in the EU terminology. This is why we kind of set up Wikipedia, where we try to define those terms and look for equivalence in the terminology of your sponsors. That is never a direct translation from one sponsor terminology to another sponsor's terminology, but at least it should give us indications of what we are most familiar with in order to better understand the language of other regions. This is just the beginning, so at the moment we invite everybody to participate in that, in order to really, for us also, for all of us, really have something where we can always go back and add terms. Generally, so how do you go from how do you find, first of all, a relevant call? If you're successful, that is fine, but first of all, you need to find and identify a relevant call. So there are different ways to finding that. You can find suitable call by area of interest, by keywords, or by the Horizon 2020 priority. So on the at the participant portal, again, there's the website. There are listed areas of interest which you can actually click on, and there you find open calls linked to exactly those. But of course, you can also go into the participant portal and then as topic, and then topic program. Not only in all those European programs. And also through all the work programs and looking for the term you have given it. Then there's the possibility to look directly under the Horizon 2020 priority. There you go to the link Horizon 2020, and then a window opens where you can filter by those priority areas are currently open or which will be published. And they go up. There you can again click on them. So let's kind of jump a bit forward. So in order to better understand how to read a call. So a call page, they are always set up exactly the same way. So every topic has a dedicated page on the portal and is structured the same way. It says the type of action, it says the challenge, it says scope of the call, the expected impact, and finally, but it says cross-cutting priority. So this challenge actually outlines the context and why this problems is necessary to be tackled. This scope specifies the focus, the expected impact. There it's described what expected with the what the key elements of what is expected. And the cross-cutting priorities is something which the evaluators will look into whether it will be included in, whether it is included in the call, where the Commission has kind of identified areas where it tackled there. Also, you have the possibility either search for a partner if you have identified a call you would like to apply for, but you don't have enough European partners. You can have here the search for a partner in a specific area. But not only searching, you can put yourself in with your expertise as a partner if other people are looking for you for a partner in the area you have the expertise. And then you just then this window pops up, and there you have the possibility to either enter your information. Sometimes, yeah, as I said earlier, there are specific areas, for example, where the area of the flagship initiative, when it says highly encouraged, that don't even dare to apply without a US partner, because this is the call is specifically there for this there. So yes, there is always that. And also the other way around, just so put yourself in, but also if you look for a partner, it might be useful. We go into more detail with the portal later on, and also on how to kind of understand the scope and understand a call text. So this was just the information where you find it. And with that, I have
Okay, we're going back to the first column. Okay. The reason we're going to talk about hosting a Marie Sklodowska-Curie Fellow is because I kind of view this as an excellent baby step into entering Horizon 2020 land. And that is because it allows a U.S. institution to participate in a framework program, receive money in the framework program, but not necessarily be bound to all the terms and conditions or be legally committed to the European Commission. This is a, I'm going to skip this actually. Okay, so first we're going to talk about what kind of Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions exist, why we want to maybe participate in this, what that looks like, how much money might be involved, what are some of the challenges, and then also what are some of the benefits. So the Marie Curie Fellowships are under the Excellent Science pillar. So they're pillar number 1. They're individual grants or fellowships to researchers, and they have a couple different groups. So they're really meant to be a career development tool for your early stage researchers. So there's a postdoc program, there's a PhD program, and then there's also some larger exchange programs under the Marie Curie Action that involve a faculty exchange. So Harvard does have one of these where we're involved, a large group of researchers in a similar area, and they collaborate and do short-term visits back and forth. So 1 month visiting, 2 month visiting, etc. And we host a lot of those visitors, and then every now and then our faculty member goes over. So it really is about career development, supporting certain activities. We're going to really focus on the individual fellowships and more specifically something called the global fellowship. So the individual fellowships are like a lot of other fellowships, right? They're just focused on money coming out of Europe to advance training and really to increase international access and mobility and to establish and expand the partner organization and resources of new faculty, new researchers. Really trying to give them a broader base of support, collaborators, etc. There's 2 types of individual fellowship. One is the European Fellowship, which allows you to spend 1 year at another European institution while you're still employed or at home with your partner institution in another country, or you can do the same thing globally. Basically, you spend 12 to 24 months with a partner organization in the United States. For the next 15 minutes, we'll call that Harvard. And your home institution or your actual employer back in Europe becomes your base, your employer, and you have to return to that institution for the final year of the fellowship. So 1 to 2 years out of Europe, and then you are required to come back for 1 year. That makes some terminology just to make sure that we're all on the same page when we're talking about this. The beneficiary is the home institution. So that is the European organization or university where the researcher is based. Partner organization is the Harvard in this case, or ASU. The difference here is that the European entity is the one that receives all the money on behalf of the fellow and also signs the grant agreement, the actual legal documentation with the European Commission. The partner organization does not have to do that, even though the partner organization will be hosting the fellow for quite possibly 2/3 of the entire fellowship. That 12 to 24 month period that you're at the partner institution as a fellow is called the secondment or outgoing phase. Grant agreement and partnership agreement we've talked about a little bit agreement is with the European Commission. A partnership agreement or a secondment agreement is the agreement that the home institution signs with the partner organization. We call it an MOU, we call it a fellowship agreement, it doesn't matter what it's called. Basically, the agreement between the European entity and the party entity that says, yes, we will host your fellow. As I mentioned, the European entity signs the grant agreement and takes on responsibility for all the compliance obligations that come along with that. They actually remain the employer of the so the employment contract, benefits, everything that you would normally do for a fellow when you're employed by your institution is actually handled by the European entity. And then figuring out what that looks like at your own institution, about what kind of equipment they're provided, etc., needs to be kind of worked out. But salary and all of that are paid directly, typically, by the home institution. The partner institution agrees to provide quality supervision and support and like resources to fellows in the same area. The reason I emphasize that is we have about between 20 and 30 Marie Curie fellows on campus at any given time. Obviously, depending on what department, lab, or center they are in, changes what kind of resources we give to our postdoctoral fellows, right? So we have a fellow in the divinity school, and the resources at the divinity school are much different than at the medical school. So if you're in a wet lab, you want to make sure that you're giving a Marie Curie fellow in the medical school access to the lab, the same space, locker, etc., that you would to other types. In the divinity school, you need to make sure that they have library access, box, so they don't have to have the same as the HMS fellow, but they do have to have the same as other fellows. That gets a little confusing. You also have to have a mentor or a PI at your partner institution that is the direct contact with the fellow that makes sure that everything's going according to plan, really is helping and assisting in training and development. The researcher also has to have a commitment. They actually prepare the proposal. They're responsible for finding a partner institution. They're responsible for finding a PI, and they have to work exclusively on the research project. 100% of their effort for the entire 2 to 3 years must be on the project that they propose to the commission. The third and perhaps most important thing for the partner institution is there's a mandatory requirement. So after your 24 months, you have to go back to Europe. You have to go back to your home institution. Typically, this is not a problem. Fine. There was one time where we had a fellow who actually had been a graduate student at Harvard previous to having a fellowship with us and had been on campus working in the lab for a very, very long time. And I got a phone call from the home institution and said, "Where is our fellow?" And I said, "Isn't he back with you?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Huh, okay, let me go look." So it turns out he just didn't want to go back, and he just talked to the department lab person, and they extended his, appointment, and his ID still worked and all this stuff. And so we had to shut all of that down and send him, which he did go willingly, but that's one thing. So individual fellowships, the call opens every April. They should be published by the end of the month for next year. And the deadline is always the first week of September, right after Labor Day. This is actually a timeline that we provide to our researchers. We have a lot of applications that go out the door, anywhere between 40 to 60 applications for fellows wanting to do is at Harvard. So through the last 5 years, we put together a pretty robust system to be able to catch all of the fellows that are going out. And so this is a process that we provide to them. But it's just the dates, that's super helpful for everybody else. At the proposal stage, the partner institution has to be registered in the participant portal. So you need a PIC number, which is very similar to a DUNS number. Most institutions, most larger research institutions now have one of these. And so what happens is the fellow goes into the participant portal and chooses an organization using the PIC number and associates that institution with his or her application. Harvard has a few PIC numbers. We have one for our actual institution, the President and Fellows of Harvard College, but we also have one for Harvard Global. So we actually do blog posts and a number of things to make sure that it gets associated with our President and Fellows. The other thing that can sometimes happen is that you are looking for an appointment at the medical school. You don't realize that the medical school is just a school or department that is not happening. They also try to avoid people actually applying for a hospital appointment and using the President and Fellows of Harvard College PIC. A lot of work in advertising about this process has helped us minimize issues, minimize application errors, and also prevent the problem where we didn't know that an application was being submitted, which is a little bit easier under the commission scheme as opposed to federal system. We had a few years ago, we used to have a lot of students showing up with like a copy of a secondment agreement that was like, I'm here for so-and-so, and we were like, who are you and where did you come from? We try to get our hands wrapped around that now. So the one thing that the European Commission did to try to avoid the home institution or the host institution from knowing about the fact that they were agreeing to do that. And I think the reason why that happened is because fellows are in charge and the fellows just call the faculty directly, right? And of course, if you're a faculty member and you get a call from a very qualified postdoc who's looking to come to your lab, of course you're going to say yes, right? Really prestigious fellowship, you come with your own funding, you have to be 100% committed to the project in the lab. Like, this sounds like a really good deal. But you don't, researchers don't always turn around and talk to their central office, even if they know they should or something like that. So now you actually have to provide a letter to the commission supporting, and this has cut down on the fact that now institutions are really well aware of who's coming and what that looks like. So we actually just have a standard letter of commitment now that we do. We require both an institutional and a faculty on that letter. Question? Okay. So if the fellowship is funded, the home institution signs the grant agreement with the institution, and then the grant agreement forms the basis for the partnership agreement between Harvard and the European entity, or ASU and the and then we negotiate and execute a partnership agreement, ideally before the fellow arrives on campus. That doesn't always happen, but that's the ideal situation. So this is just the graphic representation of what these fellowships look like. The entire fellowship, again, is 36 months. You have an outgoing phase for a return. I'm pointing this out because this is a situation where your home institution in Europe is not one that you have been at previously. So say you have graduated or defended your PhD at a country and you're actually moving to a different home institution in Germany, for example, you actually need time to be able to establish residency and other employment issues in Germany to make sure that everything's all squared away. We actually had a situation where a Dutch researcher who was going to a German entity, but they never actually, even though they were technically employed by this German university, they just immediately came to Harvard. And as a result, they didn't have the residency requirements to qualify for any of the employee benefits. that they would otherwise get through the German university, because they need to be living in Germany for a set period of time. And so neither the home institution or the partner institution could actually provide any of the benefits that were legally required by the European Commission because of this strange loophole Germany. So they added this. The convent phase up to 3 months where you could go and do what you need to do at your European institution before coming out. A little inside baseball, but it's important nonetheless. So considerations for the partner institution. Like I said, residency requirements back in Europe, funding requirements coming in, how the funding will be managed. That's something that you need to work out with the home institution. Insurance, benefits, requirements are a factor. Obviously, appointments at institutions drive what type of benefits you can get or not get. Also, there's a significant difference between healthcare benefits and other access in the US and Europe. And so making sure that all of that is squared away is very important. The other thing is intellectual property. So the terms and conditions of the Marie Curie Fellow require that the fellow is able to maintain inventorship rights over the things that they invent, and also that they're able to take them back to their home institution. It's written in such a way that can be pretty broadly interpreted. However, you negotiate that at the partnership agreement level. Worst case scenario, we have agreed to joint ownership over inventions that the fellow creates. This isn't always a great situation if you're in a lab that has a lot of IP, has a lot of licenses, etc. So we flag a lot of our high-performing labs at the proposal stage and make sure they understand that it is possible that if the fellow is sitting in the lab, they might have joint ownership rights going back. Sorry. Okay. Costs. So, as I mentioned previously, costs are really paid directly to the fellow by the home institution. The costs are quite generous in terms of fellowship programs. It's because it is 100% what you're working on. There's a living allowance, a mobility allowance, and also if you're traveling with family, there's a family allowance. There's also institutional costs. Institutional costs covers research, training, networking, any expenses that they have while they're in your institution. And then there's also management and indirect costs, which are really in lieu of IDC. So they're equated to like if you had a foundation award where you could direct charge certain line items that you would normally be covered under your F&A rate. This is what management and indirect costs kind of tracks. So you can use that to expend rent, other fees. So on each side, and then the difference between these and your collaborative projects is it's actually like a flat rate per month. So these are all based on the number of months, and then each cost is billed accordingly. So these numbers are always the same, which does make it a little bit easier when you're managing it, because you always know as the partner institution, you're going to get 19,200 euros in the research training and networking costs to manage on behalf of. Similarly, management and overhead expenses will be in the same amount. Again, I mentioned this earlier. Some of the challenges that we've had with our fellows have been around health insurance, making sure that you have the right appointment, that you're actually benefits eligible, can be really tricky when you're not paying a salary. And providing the same level and appropriate levels of coverage to meet the requirements of the European entity can also be challenging because healthcare in the US is not so great. And this kind of summarizes the intellectual property considerations. Basically, there's two concerns. One I already mentioned, sort of about the fact that you could have ownership of IP being jointly shared. That's just the nature of the work. But other things is the open science requirement under Horizon 2020. So you just want to make sure that there's public access and dissemination of the research that the can be working on. This is not really a problem, but it's worth mentioning. Okay, so I started off by saying that this was a great way to enter into Horizon 2020 or European Union Commission, and then I talked about all the things that could go wrong. So why should you do this? The thing that's really great about this program is it doesn't just create networks for the researchers. It creates networks for the institution and for the faculty. We started really emphasizing and supporting the Marie Curie Fellowship Program when Horizon 2020 started, because it had existed under FP7 and we really wanted to streamline and better. We knew that there were fellows on campus that we didn't even know were on campus. And we knew that there was an untapped market for supporting this. And so for the last 5 years, we've actively sought to support this fellowship program. And as a result, those fellows have established relationships in European entities, turned around and created partnerships and collaborations for our researchers all across Europe. So some of it is just that the faculty member wants to keep working with their PhD students when they go over to Europe, and that's okay, right? And then other times they have colleagues and things that recommend fellows to come work with this. And so we really use this as the foundation for creating this larger network, and not just in Horizon projects, but for European partners in other projects like NIH and NSF, et cetera. So the other good thing too is it's a very competitive program and they are really well funded. And so if you are hosting this type of fellow as a researcher, you get a very quality researcher in your lab for 2 years, which is a pretty, from an administrative standpoint, not needing to sign the grant agreement with the European Commission makes life a little bit easier. You don't have to worry about some of the liability hurdles and different things that might make your general counsel a little squeamish about entering into this program, which we'll talk about later. And you have a whole lot of flexibility in negotiating your partnership agreement with your with the European Home Institution. It does mean that you're never usually negotiating with the same institution twice, right? So I said we have 30 on campus. It's actually fairly rare that we overlap with institutions. We have a couple with ETH, we have a couple with a French university, but usually it's all new organizations. So that's starting from scratch, right? We usually have our own secondment agreement that we use that we've hodgepodge together with other European templates. We'd like to start with that, which does make it easier, especially when we're doing many. But most of the time, we've become pretty savvy enough to negotiate these to the point where it doesn't take us very long. To that end, we have put a lot of effort into streamlining this process. this is probably everything you ever needed to know about that. We do a blog post every year, and I put the link here. So go to it. You can also just Google Marie Curie Fellowship, Harvard, OSP, and it should pop up pretty quickly. We have found that fellows find this very fast. So they use Google and they immediately get to this blog post. Clearly sets out how we do things, why we do things, where it's being supported, and we get an email from them, and we're able to get them at proposal stage. And as you know, that's the key. But if you're thinking about supporting this program in this way, it's a really nice way to start. Just change. Do change Jennifer Pond because I don't want to do that. But and then there's some other really nice details between directly about where you go in the portal to do this, etc. The other thing too is the application for an individual fellow is grouped and set up the same way that a collaborative project is. So if you start looking at or reviewing a Marie Curie fellowship application, you're going to start to become more familiar with the forms and the layout of the program for some of the collaborative projects, because the forms are really, and that is also very helpful. So yeah. We don't do that now. We have we're starting to do that. I think we don't have enough data yet, to be totally honest with you. We have started to, we can track the amount of proposals successes that we know about. But every now and then one gets through. And then we have started to link those collaborations, at least from an institution basis, out to other projects. So kind of a mapping. But with it's the program, the fellowship's 3 years. Right? So even from the first year, the other thing too that's been interesting, we keep an eye on is Marie Curie fellows who were also Harvard graduates. So if we have an undergrad, we kind of tag undergraduates and also graduate students. See like how many times it comes, like does it come back around, which is really interesting. And it's close to 30%. Really the more interesting thing, although I never get at this data because again, as I started telling you guys, decentralized, we also have a lot of fellows that are at our affiliated hospitals. There's, it depends on the year, but anywhere between 60 to 70 Marie Curie fellows in the Boston area, the greater Boston area. And so we started working with the commission to host kind of meetups like across the Boston area. So not just Harvard affiliated, but the random fellow at BU or Northeastern or something. So the program that we've kind of set up to kind of do that has caught the eye of the commission. And a year ago, we actually hosted on campus like a Marie Curie meetup where the commission came and like asked how everything's going and talked about things. And I think actually some of the changes about that first secondment phase was the direct result of a pretty significant problem we had with a fellow at Harvard. That we couldn't get what he needed. Yeah. It depends. Sometimes, yes. It depends on the science, but yeah, usually it's a good one. No, it's negotiable. They have to have access to those benefits somehow. And the easiest way to do that is through the European institution. There have been some instances where, and this is rare, the institution chooses not to manage all the money. So that, and Derek would never do that, but bear with me. That instead of home institution paying the fellow directly, remaining actually the employer of record, we have had some institutions that just send all of the funding to Harvard, and that allows us to set up an actual employment contract instead of a fellowship appointment for the fellow, and then we pay them a salary. Now, correct. Exactly. And they should be. Like, that is not the favored way to do this. The favored way to do it is for the European institution to remain the employer of record, and you second that fellow. And you stand in the shoes of the employer. You act as a de facto employer, but you're actually not. What country is her host institution? Yep. Yeah. I would make sure there's a partnership agreement in place. It'll make it easier between ASU and the Spanish institution. Okay. You no, so the residency requirements are laid out in the requirements for the award, but when you apply for the fellowship, your home institution, so your European institution that you're applying for the award for, does not have to be where you are currently. So like we have had situations where we've had let's say they come in on like a Human Frontiers fellowship. They're at Harvard for 1 year, but they have previously they've met the residency requirements for us for 5 years in Europe. They apply with a German institution or a Spanish institution to be their home institution, where they would like to complete their ultimate activity, that return phase, regardless of the fact that they haven't actually been there yet. And then they add a and it's really up. And we found that if you are willing to host a fellow, the best way to do that is to kind of advertise that ASU is quote unquote open for global interlabs. It's really a postdoctoral program, yeah. There is some Marie Curie programs for PhDs, but these individual fellowships, the global fellowships, are postdocs. Yeah, absolutely. Correct. And sponsoring them for the time. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Unless they go back. Unless they go back to Europe for that period of time, then go back again. Yes. Exactly. Oh yeah. I don't know if we'll get to this, but this is the signing of the implementing arrangement, and they look very happy. If I was in this picture, I would be like this.
So, funding rates. Well, it's about the rules and regulate, like rules and conditions. They try to make project reachable costs. We will, in the afternoon, we will have a look at different costs and stuff. And the European Commission tries to give you what you spend. There's one exception, that's innovation action. So there are different kinds of projects also within the collaborative project. And one type of it is this political agenda. They try to make the market kind of dynamic. And so there are companies in these projects, and in order not to distort the market too much, they do fund only 70%. Otherwise, fund not the idea of the whole program. Also, in terms of overhead / indirect costs, they tried to make it simpler, so it was much more complicated before. And under Horizon 2020, they just introduced this 25% flat rate for on the overall direct cost, which so you cannot negotiate. But you can. So a simple calculation example: if you budget a project of €100, the indirect cost will be €5, and the European Commission will fund you 100% of the total costs. Thank you. And it works pretty like that. Question? Yeah. Sorry. You did not talk about that yet, right? No. And we will talk about this, and specifically also about this DOT thing, how that works, how it could work, and the other options for participation. So yes. So in general, any institution can participate in the project. Whether and how it receives the funding as um, and the US institutions can also coordinate, but you might not want to do that. Because if you look like what's the coordinate is responsible to collect the reports of the other beneficiaries, submit them in time to set up. So it's a lot of administrative work, and it's really good if you know how, if you are into Horizon 2020 projects, if you know how everything works, then you get the connection to Brussels, and that might help you to further. But if you are a newcomer to the program, it's not recommended to start with the project. So that's again, we talked about it, the eligibility conditions for a project. And already a couple of times, like, for instance, participation of US institutions. What was the first? So then they want that things defined in there, or collaboration with industry is encouraged, or even requested. They are gonna write it specifically in the specific topic and in the content. Also, if there are different funding rules, if something changes, that's always questions up to this point. It does not have to be the US. So it can be the US institution. The good thing is that you can claim the cost of the project manager on the project, so you can hire somebody. Yes. Any further questions there? So,
collaborate internationally, and it's about tackling societal challenges globally, because not one country or one region can solve it on their own. It's also in order to support the external partners, and it's to strengthen the excellence and attractiveness in research and innovation, and of course also for economic reasons, and that is basically the main driver behind the whole program as a whole. So international cooperation also, again, we said that for participation, so it is open to all legal entities somebody asked earlier, what is institutions? All illegal entities in a third country or an international organization. And there might be restrictions, as we earlier mentioned, for reciprocity reasons or for security reasons. Funding only is possible if the third country is identified in the work program, and I showed you where you would find this, or if the participant is deemed essential by the Commission, not by the consortium. Well, of course, the consortium has to agree on that, but it's the Commission who decides. And when there is a bilateral scientific agreement, and as we mentioned earlier, there is the agreement between the NIH and the European Commission that would allow European American entities to receive. Of course, there are also alternatives, and this is one of them. So this Horizon project. Member states or countries, and they all sign, which is contract with the they pay everyone partner funding with the partners. And then one of those partners has an international partner. This partner would then be a linked partner, one of the partners. Third party. Oh, that are next. They have identification code. It's comparable to a DUNS number. But as a linked third partner, one of the partners, that partner does not need to sign the contract with the European Commission. Does not receive funding. He has to bring his own funding or own budget, and he fulfills specific tasks. But he does not need, or she does not need, to do any financial report. So that brings us to the question what actually a third party is. So a third party can be a legal entity that carries out work of the action, supplying goods or resources and services, but they do not sign the grant agreement. They can either directly carry out works of that are described in the Annex A. The Annex A would be the description of action. But also they could only provide, that's also possible that they only provide parts of the works, services or goods that one of the partners would need to carry out the action. And again, they only receive financial support, effectively money, if they are the beneficiaries of the action, and only if it's authorized in the call itself. So this kind of just a chart where you can once again see what different options there are: a linked third party, a subcontractor, third party providing in-kind contributions, or a contractor. And oops. Here you always see what type of work or she, whether they are providing resources or whether they actually do work with outline. What costs are, and then you just, there is a bit, you say this is it costs XYZ, and this is the price you give to the beneficiary or to the partner, and then that will be paid. But that also means that no overhead will be possible, because within the price your overhead or your would already be part of that. Okay. And also, as you see here, it says link third party, and there is selecting the third party as a condition. There, you must have a legal link with the European partner or the or the beneficiary, or being affiliated. So that mostly applies to companies have kind of branches in different countries, or for example. But also this this actually has exactly the same thing, not enough chart. So what does this mean in respect to the grant agreement? I said earlier that if you're a linked third party, or all those possibilities you do not need to sign the grant agreement, not the contract with the Commission. But of course, still the partners would extend obligations to their name in the grant agreement to you in order to be liable as part of the consortium. That means that you would still be obliged to keep a record of your time record keeping and supporting the documentations. You would need to do reporting if you are a linked third party. You would definitely need to sign a memorandum of understanding, for example, to avoid any conflicts of interest, and also to ensure confidentiality. And probably that memorandum of understanding would also name the fact that you would promote the action, and also would give visibility to the project. And of course, liability there, the consortium would have to your partner. This is basically where all these different options are once again outlined. Are part of the consortium. Then and then the role as a partner, role benefit. That also would sign grant. Sign the consortium partners of the talk about the with ethics. And would also all the reporting, all the now as a one of the partners, then But science but you could come your own and might not have money or one. The same as a and there is what is this? Option for best carbon. Now, but they not want to and I'm applying already. But it's kind of it is very how to yeah. So the diatribe on law. The problem with most international law, most treaties, and this is even a treaty or an agreement, it's an arrangement. So in the grand scheme of like actual enforceability and usefulness, we're already 3 levels down, right? We couldn't even agree with the State Department and the Commission to make this an agreement. This is an actual State Department slide that explains why the aforementioned arrangement makes life easier. You have to look at this slide for approximately 48 hours before you actually understand what it means. But we're going to give it to you and you're going to have it and it's going to be fine. But basically, I'm going to go back to this slide. Basically, it's exactly what Annika said, is that there's a couple options to participate, and most options are as an actual beneficiary where you're getting money, whether either you're eligible for funding under the 3rd pillar, society challenge, or whether you're working with a consortium that has put you in as deemed essential because they're very important to the project. And then there's this other really nice model whereby you can be almost a full beneficiary. You get listed in the grant agreement, but you're not bound to all of the legal obligations to the commission. You're not receiving grant funding directly. This is kind of the next, number 2, international partners is the next best thing.
international partners was not necessarily available prior to 2012. Later, 2000. So this Article 14A that the Commission did on their own is actually a result, I think, of what the US and the EU was trying to do under the implementing arrangement. And it is my hope that this 14A unifying US partners into the consortium, so actually being named in the project and having access to all these things, will be what we do forward in the horizon. Whereas here, we're not named. You are in the project, but not. Access to the project, no one can tell that you do. It's a very strange thing. Overcome some of the terms and conditions in the grant agreement that the State Department kept hearing from universities like Harvard, like the University of Maryland, and the UC system, that it was really hard to actually sign the grant agreement. It's really hard to become a full beneficiary, even if there was money. And it was really hard even to do it without money, because the partners were still making us agree to all these terms and conditions that were sort of not consistent with our own institutional policies and some of the regulations coming out of the federal government. The two big ones are liability and then also governing law. Governing law, of course, and the grant agreement is the laws and regulations of Belgium. And as a state institution, that might be a difficult thing to agree to, actually might be illegal. So the whole idea of putting this implementing arrangement in place was to give you a way to still participate, to be a collaborator and a supporter of this consortium, to have access to all of the results and other things that come out of a project without violating your own law. You can read the implementing arrangement. It's not very long. As far as international law goes, it's an easy read. But it's not super useful. And it's not clear how to use it. EU institutions aren't really sure how to use it. Usually, as a US institution entering into one of these projects, the first time you've really seen any of this, so you don't even know about the existence of an implementing agreement arrangement. So the best thing I think moving forward is to try to use that 14A international partners and get named in the grant agreement and move forward. The other nice thing too is Annika mentioned that if you put in a proposal where you're saying that ASU or a US institution is deemed essential for the project, you ask for full budget, etc. You're named in the proposal, and the commission comes back and says, no way, we can't give you a US partner money for this. You automatically then default to a named partner under 14A. So it actually works out really good. So I'm hoping that the implementing arrangement goes with that, and we just use 14A to move forward, but who knows? International law. So questions about this very confusing part, which you can also download on the BILAT website. Yes. Yeah, I mean, can I ask you a really frank question? When you make them do that, I mean, does that really, it makes everybody feel better, like the general counsel, but at the end of the day, right? I don't know. Makes sense. We do the same thing. That's We'll talk about that later. But actually, we're not really going to talk about GDPR because we would we would need another 2 days. And then we would probably need like another week. But the thing about GDPR is it doesn't actually, not really about research data. Research data is like the, the caught in the crossfire. They are standing in between what is the European and the Googles and Facebooks and Amazon of the world, and we got sucked into something that they didn't really account for. So when I tell people to not worry about GDPR too much, what I mean is research administrators should not really worry too much about GDPR yet. I know that it is like the hot button thing and everybody's panicking about it, but the people at your institution who should really be worried about it are the people who are actually collecting and processing identifiable information. And that includes your HR department, your alumni people, and your admission. You know, I totally agree. But what I'm saying is, but ASU is actually so technically have Nicholas's email address associated with this conference on file. That is subject to GDPR. So kind of an embargo in that way is an incorrect way of doing it. Again, Europe has well, if it's human subjects data. If it's human subjects data, the problem with GDPR is it's not just human subjects data. So if you don't have, so not all are, that would trigger an IRB review in this case. That's one of the disconnects. Yeah. But non-human subjects research data doesn't. This is like, again, this is why we'd be here a whole another day. No, it's okay. You're just postponing lunch. True. And if you could structure it so that you don't have to receive, like if you have an embargo on it and that's just what it is, and you can still structure the program to account for that, then that would be in the ethics section. It would be, that's going to be tough. Yes. It does. I really, I mean, this is a Jennifer Ponting opinion, not a Harvard opinion or a legal opinion or anything. This just, I think that in 6 months, everyone will be like, oh. But until then, we need to put everybody's lids on everybody because they're freaking out.
And by the way,
and because they're freaking out, they're also unnecessarily flowing down terms and obligations related to research data that actually don't apply. So even though we may have this moratorium, like ASU may have like, no data, the first question is this really subject to, are you figuring out everything, trying to cover your bases, which I think is what's happening too. 6 months, we'll be fine. Any more questions about exciting things with GDPR, or do we want to have lunch now? We want to have lunch. 1:05. What time is it? Yeah, 1:05.